what's the biblical truths behind parenting. Forget what different people out there that have loud voices in social media and on TV and in books and everywhere else that maybe are very popular, but they don't necessarily teach biblical truths. Forget what they all say. Even start forgetting a little bit what mom and dad say.
Hello everyone, we are Greg and Jacquie Francis, and welcome to High Performance Parenting, where our passionate goal is to encourage you to raise champion children in a crazy world. Every week, we will bring you multiple episodes from our extensive experience of raising our six happy, healthy, successful, godly kids who are confidently equipped to win big in life.
We deeply believe that any parent who is provided with the right knowledge and continual support can raise amazing kids. And when they do, all of our futures get better. If raising up future generations of absolute champions matters to you as much as it does to us, here's how you can contribute. Like and share this podcast with everyone you know. And together, let's embrace this journey of raising champion kids in a crazy world.
Hi guys, welcome back. We're super excited. Podcast number 24.
24.
And we're excited to chat with you guys today about making the decision to have kids when you're first dating, how many, and when. Mm-hmm. That's what we're going to chat about today.
I'm excited to talk about it.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, it's, I don't know that people really get a chance to have a conversation about this with people. I don't really think we did. You know, I mean, we started having some between ourselves. We had some people in our life that were kind of offering some advice based on some business stuff. But other than that, we never really had anybody that sat down with us and just said, hey, let's think this through a little bit. Let's actually develop some kind of a plan and a strategy. And let's think about what it'll mean when you do decide to start having kids, what it'll mean when you actually do have kids, what it means the first 5 years to 10 years of having, very young children. And then what does it mean when they're teenagers? I mean, what does it do to your life? What things can you gain from it? What things will you sacrifice because of it? And how to prepare for it, right?
I agree. I think it's super important for everybody before they ever get married to discuss if you even want to have children.
Yep.
There's a lot of different things happening in the world today. And when we first started dating, both of us weren't really sure if we wanted to have children. Mm-hmm. Just whether it was fear, whether it was just traumas from the past, whether it was relationships with siblings that I know that has impacted so many people's different decisions in life, we too started questioning if we would even be great parents or how to do it or what it would look like. And I think because of that, at one point, both of us thought we might not really have children, and that might be okay. And I think because of that, when we met each other, both of us being high performers, go-get-it type people, achieving so much in life, and knowing that, we wanted to be successful, not just individually, but together. Once we decided that we had found each other and that we were meant to be, that we really wanted to talk about if we were going to have children. Mm-hmm. And again, we didn't take into all the considerations, but I'm a firm believer that you cannot change people later on or change their mind if they really feel they don't want to have children or achieve certain goals or, maybe do certain things in their life. You can't change their mind. They have to decide that themselves. So the last thing you want to do is get into a marriage and say, well, I want to have kids. He said he didn't, but I think I'll change him after a couple of years.
Yeah.
That's really a recipe for just really a lot of fights, anger, disappointment, bitterness that can just add up. Mm-hmm. And so for us, we sat down, had time. We talked about it. We talked about kind of why we both didn't want to have children.
Yeah, we kind of came about this in almost a backwards way compared to probably what some would. I can envision some people, they grow up a certain way. They have their normal, maybe their parents started having kids when they were 20 years old or 22 years old, a lot like, my parents did, or I don't know, how old were your parents?
Yeah, they were young 20s too. Young
20s. So then you see that and you think, well, then that's just going to be what I'm probably going to do as well. Is probably what you think growing up, I would guess. For me, it was a little backwards of that. It was, there was so much dysfunction and trauma in what I saw around me and in our family dynamic that I watched my older siblings have kids at a young age. But, when I look back on it now, you got to remember I'm the youngest. So my oldest sister's 10 years older. My oldest brother's 9 years older. My brother Jerry's 5 years older. So that's a big gap when you're a kid.
Sure.
So especially if they kind of followed the path of my parents. I think Gordon started having kids at 19. I think Jerry did as well. I think it was like right around 19. And so
they all got married young, super young, started their family.
Yeah, they all started early. And so, I mean, like with me being the youngest and the gap that there was, I mean, I remember I was kind of like a big brother to my nieces that Gordon had.
Well, because your parents were helping raise them.
They were, because see, that's kind of my point. Like, so my perspective was, okay, so grandma and grandpa kind of raised the kids because the parent, meaning my brother and his wife, were so dysfunctional that they were fighting all the time and separated half the time. And there was so much like chaos because they weren't like stable people. Yeah. So then these kids get thrown in the mix. And thankfully, my parents were more stable, sure. Than they were. And so this was like my background. Like, okay, I don't really understand how having kids works, but hopefully there's a healthy grandma and grandpa around if you're a mess.
Yeah, to kind of clean it up for you. So by the time we met, actually, we didn't even meet till you were what, 27, 28?
26.
Yeah.
No, 27.
27. I think we were at least 27. And
yeah, I was 27. You were 23.
Yeah. And so, first of all, we didn't even meet at 19 to get married and start our family. So that already was getting kind of, a different route for us. Yeah. And then when we did meet, you had already done a couple different careers choices along the way and done some different traveling and stuff for work. And so you were, getting to a place where maybe you were really kind of ready to at least talk if you wanted to have children in the future.
Yeah, I wasn't ready at all. Okay. I mean, when I don't know if you remember, we first met, like you and I were pretty committed to, I don't think we're going to have kids. Like you wanted to be CEO of something. I was already starting to build my own business ventures. And I'm just like, a lot of it wasn't. And I think for me, at least, I can't speak for you on this, but for me, I think I used like, I'm an ambitious person as my excuse. But the reality was, I didn't know what to do at all to have a kid. Like I couldn't hardly take care of myself, as far as like emotionally and everything else. Yeah. I was just kind of like a tough, really like, I don't know, a fighter kind of a person. And I could push my way through things. But if we're talking about relational, health and everything else, I mean, I didn't have any background in this. I mean, I spent all of my life growing up protecting myself, you know what I mean? And so then you think about, I watched my brothers and what they did and how their kids reacted and that whole nightmare of what was going on there. And I'm just like, okay, well, I come from that family, so maybe it'll be like that too, right? So there's just a lot of heart stuff that had to happen for me. And, so we were pretty in alignment from the beginning. Like, I don't really know if we want to have kids. I think like we really had conversations like you wanted kids so bad in the next 2 years and I didn't, or the vice versa. We were just kind of like, hey, you know what? We love each other. Let's get married. We probably won't have kids. We'll see if something changes, right?
Yeah, I think some of the fears I had was that I just really didn't see how it fit into the level that I wanted to perform with different maybe goals, business goals, endeavors I wanted to do. I just didn't know how it fit in, quote unquote, slowing down to start a family. And then knowing your ambitious level, also, I knew you weren't going to stay home with them. So now I was like, well, this is kind of convenient. We do this and I'm just, at home, and I wanted to do so much in life, at a young age. So little did we know though that, again, we didn't have anybody kind of walking through this with us. I mean, Again, we are more than half. Majority of the things that we've learned in life, I mean, they have the saying, you learn the hard way, right? I mean, but I don't know if it was the hard way. We just learned it on our own. We didn't have mentors teaching us this. We didn't have, so we had to really try, fail, adjust it on our own.
Yeah,
you know I mean?
The two ways you learn anything, right, are mentors or mistakes. And we had a combination of both.
Yes.
You know what I mean? But when we first got married, we were in that season of just now, for the first time ever in my life, really starting to engage in being mentored by some people, be engaged and even personally developing, like actually getting habits in place that would grow me as a person, that would help me become a better leader, that would help me grow in people skills and influence and relationships and, emotional stability. I mean, you and I were on a hardcore journey. But it just started, I mean? It just started. I mean, I just started that process probably 6 months before I met you. And then
then
I
we met.
kind of pulled you into it, along the way. Then we started working on it together, and we were growing and changing. We had so much changing that we were doing.
Which kind of leads to how we ended up deciding to have a family.
That's right.
Like if we fast forward just a little bit,
Yeah.
Here we were growing, changing, developing, and enjoying the process of it. We loved educating ourselves. We loved learning. We loved seeing changes in our personal life and in the friends we were hanging out with and in the, communities that we were part of, that we started entertaining it.
Yeah.
We started seeing some people being able to go out there and accomplish different goals and dreams that they had, both financially and family-wise. You know what I mean? And we started considering this might be something we could figure out together.
Yeah.
And so we did. We took it upon ourselves that, asked some questions to some trusted people. And we started getting some answers that made sense to us. But I think what we really did is really talk about it, you and I, and what it would look like if we did have a family. We were married 5 years before we decided to start our family. And because of that, I think we had a lot of conversations. We saw a lot of other family dynamics.
Well, yeah, that happened. That happened through our pursuit of just business growth and, being around people that we considered mentors. And I mean, how many books were we reading? I mean, we were reading, a couple books a month at this point, which we never did before. And it was about all kinds of really quality topics. I mean, we spent, 3-4 years learning things that we kept saying to each other, geez, I would have learned this earlier, right? And there was such a foundation that was being built in us. So when your foundation's getting built, plus you're going out and applying things, and you're kind of, I don't know, your confidence is growing. You're starting to realize, oh my gosh, well, if I know all this stuff, then geez, we're kind of prepared to be able to lead little people.
Well, and we encouraged each other because we would have these conversations, and we started discussing what it would look like. And so for us, when we first decided, I think it is time, maybe we would like to have a couple kids, and I think we could handle this. And it doesn't have to change everything, but it sure could change stuff for us in the most amazing way. We started seeing it as more of a joy and an opportunity to kind of grow not only ourselves, but our little tribe with us.
Yeah.
And we got excited about that. So we kind of went down that path where we, I think most people, all of a sudden you're like, yeah, let's start a family. And so that's what we did. And we definitely thought that it would happen sooner than we thought.
Well, before we go there though, I mean, I think just to really make sure we drive home the point we're trying to make about this is that, we hear people all the time say, I think I want to start a family. I just don't know if I'm ready. Mm-hmm. And 9 times out of 10, the first thought that pops in my head is you probably aren't. Mm-hmm. Right? But then my question is, what are you doing to get ready? Mm-hmm. Because, you don't want to use it as an excuse to never have kids. Like, well, I'm not ready. Okay, but are you trying to get ready?
Right.
Are you building a foundation?
Yourself?
It's kind of like when people want to date. I don't know, I'm not finding the right person. It's like, well, do you even know what the right person is? Have you defined that yet? And if you have, now, are you working on you becoming the person that can actually attract that? Because that's what you put your energy towards. You know what I mean? And so it's the same kind of thing. Okay, so you're thinking you might want to be a parent. All right, well, maybe you have a bunch of questions, but what information are you seeking out? Like, how are you growing you? How are you trying your best to get yourself ready to be a parent? It doesn't mean it has to be a 10-year process. That's one of the things I love about how all the things that we've learned, we keep trying to build into our kids at such a young age. They are going to have so much of a foundation we were just talking before we jumped down here today about, our kids could fall in love and they could start having kids at 20 years old. Like it wouldn't surprise me because of how much of a foundation we've taken the time to build into them that we didn't even start building until I was 27. You know what I mean? But they're going to have it by 15. And so they're so much more ready than we could have been. And that's the key, though. It's like, okay, are you building a foundation that helps you get ready to become a parent? Not that you have to be perfect, not that you're not going to learn some stuff along the way, but there is work to do to work on you.
Well, and one of the things we talk about sometimes is, people take time to plan out their next business endeavor or their next important trip or their next, and they do all this research, but do they do enough research to feel confident in their next most important role, which might be as parents?
Yeah.
So that's what we did. We did dive in and we had a lot of conversations and, to kind of backtrack a little bit, we really had to get on the same page with some stuff before we started to have kids
what are
together.
some questions do you think that people should have, or what kind of conversations do you think that people should have in preparation to see if they're in alignment to even want to have kids?
Yeah, and that's such a good question. I mean, like a few questions that I know came to mind when we chatted about this is, number one, how many kids do we want to have?
Why, right?
Yeah, sure. I mean, why do you want to have children, and why did you pick that number?
Yeah.
Because both of that matters.
And it's a good convo because usually it comes from your normals. It's like, well, I'd like to actually maybe have 4 kids. Why? Well, I came from a family of 5. I'd like to have, a bigger family. I mean, 4 seems reasonable, whatever, right? But then the other person might have been like, well, I was an only child. I don't even know what it would be like to have a big family. The big families that I saw that were my neighbors, those kids were a mess, right? And that's their normal in their head.
So they definitely, that's a good question to ask each other, how many, and then, why you even want to have children. Really hear from each other's heart on that. Another good question I think is important is, how are we going to parent our kids? Greg and I came from different backgrounds as far as even discipline went. That was one topic we had to discuss. What does discipline look like for our kids?
Right.
And we had we'll get down the path on this, but we chose to go a biblical based discipline
because
process for our family, I would say.
You see some people and it's like timeout central, right? And you're like, I don't really see that working that great. And then you see some people that were kind of like how I grew up, where it's like if it got so bad and mom didn't do the spanking, then it was like, wait till dad gets home and he has you choose, a branch or a belt kind of thing. And it was borderline child abuse. You know what I mean? So there's just different scenarios. So, what did you grow up with and what do you think we're going to do in the future? And
let's get some resources that can help us make this decision. And again, we had such a good resource that helped us really understand so that we both could come to terms with what we felt was going to work best for our family.
But I would say, as I was referencing how we were growing so much, the main thing we were growing in is we were growing spiritually.
True.
All the personal development we were growing, we wanted to be biblically backed because we know that what's in the Word works. We know the truth is.
Well, we were just saying before we got on here, like we weren't just following whatever the new book about parenting was out, or just hey, whatever somebody's talking about over here that doesn't their child. There's no fruit really going on, and they're not even living out their faith in any area of their life, let alone in parenting.
Yeah.
We definitely went into it with a perspective that we want to do it from God's perspective, not just how Greg felt or how you grew up, not just how Jackie felt or how Jackie grew up, or not just how we felt that day, or let's just leave it till later on. Because I feel like, we all have to admit our kids are going to do things we don't want them to do.
Sure.
So you need to know how you're going to handle it. So that was like a big conversation we had, and we came back to a couple times to decide, and then we got resources for each other. So neither one of us felt that one person was just making the decision.
Yeah.
We had to come together.
But the overall thing, I would think, in my opinion, the number one thing that you and I got in agreement on is the philosophy that when we have kids, they're not just our kids. These are God's kids. Mm-hmm. And so when we're the managers or / stewards versus the owners, it makes you evaluate, what does the owner actually want us to do? And if we don't do that as the manager, then we get fired kind of thing. You know what I'm saying? And it makes you start saying, okay, well, the owner then is God. What's the biblical truth behind parenting? Forget what different people out there that have loud voices in social media and on TV and in books and everywhere else that maybe are very popular, but they don't necessarily teach biblical truths. Forget what they all say. Even start forgetting a little bit what mom and dad say. What's the biblical truth behind how we're going to actually raise kids? What needs to be put in it? And that was like the real journey we started digging into about, finding our foundation of how we're going to make these kind of decisions.
Mm-hmm. Right. Another good question that we talk to each other about is, where do we want to live when we do have kids? Mm-hmm. Like location-wise. Do we want to be close to family? Do we want to be, somewhere else where we feel that we're led to be? Like, do we want to move for schools? Do we want to move because of friendships? Do we want to move for business choices? Do we want to move because of weather? Like, what do we want to do?
Yeah.
And where do we want to live with our family when we do have them? Because again, that's an important question. If somebody has one idea that, I grew up next to my cousins and I just want my kids to grow up by their cousins,
right?
Like, that's what I want. And the other person's like, okay, but what if we have these other goals? What if we want to live somewhere else? What if we want to accomplish something else? What if God sends us somewhere else? That could be a real problem.
Yeah. It's like you have to get in alignment with vision.
Yes.
I mean, we just read that in a marriage book we were just studying where it said that if a married couple, each person has a different vision, eventually, after you fight about it long enough, somebody's going to have to give up theirs in order for you to ever have peace in your relationship. And who's going to be willing to give up theirs? Right.
So again, that's another good question. Another question that we kind of need to go back and forth on is what it would look like for us when we did have kids. What's that look like as far as our life and our goals and what we're trying to accomplish? Are we both being involved in all aspects? Are we not both being involved in all aspects? What roles are we playing in our household? What are we doing so that our house is a home that we all feel welcomed in? Because again, when you grow up with different roles in your families in the past, it could be really confusing on what you should do for your new family together.
Right on. We'll do part 2 in the next one.
Okay.
Hey everyone, thanks for listening and thanks for your love and support. We hope that today's episode added tremendous value to you and your family. It would mean so much to us if you would partner with us on our mission of helping parents around the globe raise champion children in this crazy world.
To do so, simply take a moment to like and share this podcast with everyone in your network. And we have great news. You get more of us. You can expect new episodes every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday mornings. So be sure to consistently tune in with us and enjoy our show. See you next time.